Hey, it's JayeisHuman. Now in the month of October, we within the gaming community have had some wonderful releases being presented. One title that I paid my close attention to was Konami's Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, a prior notice up into the game's general public release, myself to a degree had no playing history or distant memory of the early Silent Hill series from what I can recall. I do, however, have seen and heard of Pyramid from a title that I play on my spare time, Dead by Daylight, and by viewing the occasional film that houses the same name. That being said, it is a shame that I'm just now being exposed and diving into the Silent Hill series at this present moment. Now, what I've personally been through, the immersion and experience that I've had within my hours being pulled into the remake title was astounding to say the least. And me being me, and I'm sure for a lot of us as a community as well, whenever we find ourselves drawn in or attached towards a particular something, we're usually going to dive deeper about the understanding of said attachment. So I wanted to really understand the concept behind Konami's Silent Hill, as the game and its story itself really pulled me in. And maybe for yourselves as well, for anyone who's new to the series or are fond of a familiar telling. So without further ado, let's head into Konami's latest remake, Silent Hill 2. Now as I go on through the video, I'm going to break it down to some simple key components, ones I'd like to delve into and put the spotlight on the broader scale of things, such as the game's storytelling and narrative development, art direction, audio design, and just a whole overview overall of the game's perception and performance. Starting off with Silent Hill's storytelling and their narrative development. If there's one thing for certain about Konami's Silent Hill series, their concept and horror-driven storytelling and approach is far beyond what perfectly captures a person's mentally tormented, damaged, and imaginative mind. And in this case, we take on our perspective of our main protagonist's lead, James Sunderland, as he sets his sights and arrives at Silent Hill after strangely receiving a letter from his deceased wife, Mary, to whom both shared and had a fond memory of this specific setting. As we find ourselves in the midst of the story, we find that James seems to be in a dreamlike state, having pictured his familiar setting with Silent Hill and his encounters with the so-called townspeople. Is James really seeing these figures and entities, or are they just premonitions of his imaginative balance? It certainly begs a question that we as the players experience through the game's exploration, but one that holds a grasp of our collected and undivided attention. The story itself of Silent Hill 2 is drawn in and broken into variations of different outcomes, most notably ranging from its titles on the 6th generation console and PC platforms, which depicts our protagonists and other point of views. Now, if I'm going in depth between the Silent Hill endings, that could be a topic for another video since there is no chronological ending, but rather your own personal interpretation or possibility. For me personally, I found this really expands and colorizes the whole aspect of the game's experience in entirety, and I just love how they gave us the leisure of plausible outcomes, and rightfully so considering how well crafted the story and the game's mechanics gel together, setting in the title's replayable value for years to come. All in all, I found the story really engaging throughout the game's duration, and also reading its literature up on the fandom.com platform, really diving into and learning the characters, settings, themes, and plenty more to be fascinated and intrigued by. Now switching over to the game's art direction, from the moment I started up the title and went straight into its gameplay, I couldn't help but just simply pass by or dismiss the game's visual representation or film scene making. Me being an artsy person easily drawn in by art, the game perfectly captures our protagonist's lead to how I previously mentioned in a dreamlike setting. The ominous fog engulfing our every surrounding, the dullness of color and gray tinted lens that the game hovers over, the town being run down with no vacancy in sight, high plaster walls gating off further entrancing, inhumanoid entities creeping upon our every movement, the strangeness of encountering other town folk within Silent Hill, and lastly our hunter's physical look and eerie presence. To add this on top, I love how they gave us the option to either play in a 90s styled setting or in the game's original graphics mode. Now I personally chose my session to be catered onto the 90s mode since I never really got to experience the original for itself, and it just adds an extra layer of retroness, uneasiness, tension within the scenes and visual aspects of things, creating the sense of a plausible dream visually. To the previous Team Silent and to the current Bloober team, I personally believe they've captured something truly unique, something special and ahead of its time, considering the original second installment was publicly released in the year of 2001 to 2003. Transitioning over to the game's audio design, similar to how I loved and found myself just gazing at the game's visual representation, I also found oneself just listening carefully to the in-game general sounds. How it realistically captures elements and creates a sense of depth, emptiness, and fear. Things like the wind blowing through a stalk of crop fields, heavy metal scraping noises, the ominous buildup of the game's background music, the nothingness of the sound of radio static, entities lurking near our surroundings, and our character's physical aggression towards the entities.
What was that thing?
There are many more hidden sound designs within the game that carries that I may have overlooked or have missed, but these were the designs that I personally enjoyed hearing and picking up through my playthrough. I would highly recommend your soon-to-be or previous session to be fully played and immersed through some headphones, as I personally found myself lost visually and audially, almost as if I was watching a film up front. The whole overview overall of the remake Silent Hill's perception and performance was astoundingly excellent in my personal humble opinion, and I would highly recommend anyone who's an avid horror lover to indulge yourself, partake in a few sessions if you have the chance or opportunity to do so. From the in-game scene film, to the audio and visual effects and elements, the game's playability, and for the story itself. This, in my personal humble opinion, is a complete horror experience for those who are seeking a repolished thrill.